We all think we know what happiness is. It's that good feeling, that pleasure, right? Simple. But what if that simple definition is actually holding us back? Today, we're going to dive into this amazing ancient debate that pretty much flips our whole idea of happiness on its head. And believe it or not, it all kicks off with an argument between a monk and a carpenter.
Okay, so let's get into it. On one side, you've got this monk, Urai. On the other, a carpenter named Panchakanga. And they are just not seeing eye to eye on a really basic question about feelings. The monk is firm. There are 3 types. But the carpenter, he's absolutely convinced there are only 2.
So the monk, Udai, he's coming from what you might call the standard view. He says the Buddha taught about 3 kinds of what's called Vedana. You've got your pleasant feelings, your painful feelings, and then that kind of meh, in-between state, neither pleasant nor painful. For him, it's a neat and tidy system, 3 distinct boxes.
But the carpenter, he's a practical guy, works with his hands. He sees things differently. He argues that this thing we call neutral isn't neutral at all. He's saying, hold on, that's actually a really subtle, really refined kind of happiness, a quiet kind of contentment that we're just not labeling correctly. So for him, everything just boils down to 2 things, suffering and happiness in all its different shades.
So they go at it back and forth 3 times, and nothing. They get absolutely nowhere. It's a total stalemate. And this deadlock is what sets up this fantastic puzzle for us. Who's actually right here? Or, and maybe this is the real question, are they even talking about the same thing? What if the very word they're arguing over is the source of all the confusion? And this is where we have to dig a little deeper than just a simple translation. The word at the heart of this whole thing is Vedana. Now, your first instinct is to translate it as feeling, which sounds passive, right? Like something that just happens to you. But if we trace it back to its Pali root, vid, which means to know, the whole meaning just flips. Vedana isn't some passive sensation, it's the active process of experiencing. It's a verb, it's an action, it's something we do. Well, seeing that these 2 were just going in circles, the Buddha's attendant, Ananda, decides it's time to settle this. He listens to their whole back and forth, and then goes and lays out the entire argument for the Buddha, basically asking for the final word.
And the Buddha's answer here is just amazing. He doesn't pick a side. He doesn't say the monk is right or the carpenter is right. Instead, he just blows the whole question wide open. He says, yeah, I've taught about experiencing in 2 ways, and 3 ways. Oh, and also in 5, and 18, and 36. And you know what? Even in 108 different ways.
So what's the deal? The whole point is that the number doesn't matter at all. The Buddha explains that he teaches pariyayana, which basically means from a certain point of view or depending on the context. It turns out they were both right. They were just looking at the same reality through different but equally valid lenses.
And this just nails the bigger lesson, doesn't it? The Buddha points out that when we get stuck, insisting that our one perspective is the only truth, it just leads to conflict. But when we can actually appreciate the valid points in someone else's view, that's when we can find harmony. We can blend together, like milk and water.
Okay, so let's run with that bigger, more expansive idea, because the Buddha uses this flexible way of thinking to build out this incredible concept he calls a ladder of happiness, and it completely redefines what we're even aiming for. But first, we need to do another one of these deeper translations. The word for happiness is sukha. We think of it as a feeling, but its root meaning is something more like good space. So picture a wheel. If the axle fits perfectly in the hub, the wheel spins smoothly, effortlessly. That's sukha. Its opposite, dukkha, or suffering, means bad space. It's that poorly fitting axle that makes the wheel wobble and grind. See? Happiness isn't just a feeling, it's a state of things working really, really well. So with this new definition in mind, the Buddha lays out this ladder of better and better states of this good space. It starts on the ground floor with the kind of happiness we all know, the sukha you get from pleasant sights, sounds, tastes, all the senses. But then we start to climb up into these deeper, more profound kinds of happiness that you find in meditation, moving from a state of joy and focus all the way up to this pure, unshakable peace.
And the ladder? Oh, it doesn't stop there. It keeps going, climbing up into states of being that are so subtle they're almost impossible to describe with words. We're talking about experiences of reality that go way beyond our normal consciousness, into these dimensions of infinite space, endless awareness, and even a state of pure nothingness. And each one is considered a higher, more refined form of sukha.
But right at the very, very top of this ladder,
That's where we find the most mind-bending, the most paradoxical kind of happiness you can imagine. It's a state that, from down here, sounds like the exact opposite of a good time.
It's called Sanya Vegayatani Nirodham. I know, it's a mouthful. But what it means is the cessation, the complete stopping, of perception and experiencing. It's a state of such deep, profound quiet that the mind just stops processing everything. All the seeing, the hearing, the thinking, the feeling, that whole active process of Vedana we talked about, it just comes to a complete halt. And this brings us right to the heart of the puzzle. If happiness is a kind of experience, then how on earth could the complete end of all experience be the highest happiness there is? It feels like a total contradiction.
The answer circles right back to that bigger, broader definition. The Buddha calls happiness any state that is a good space, any state that is profoundly peaceful, stable, and totally free from that grinding, wobbling friction of life.
So from that point of view, the stopping of all experiencing is the ultimate good space. It is a state of absolute total freedom. It's not a feeling of happiness that you're chasing after. It's the incredible peace that you find when the constant friction of experiencing life finally comes to rest. It's a happiness that exists beyond feeling itself.
And that brings us right back to where we started with that argument. It really challenges us to think bigger, doesn't it? To look beyond just pleasant sensations. If happiness isn't just some fleeting feeling, but a good space, a kind of deep harmony that we can actually cultivate, what new possibilities for contentment might that open up in our own lives?